Would you like to learn more about how to position your research or scholarship in front of the media? If so, join me for this week's episode where I'm talking with PR expert Christina Daves, and she's going to give you 5 strategies for pitching to the media and getting your work out to the public. Welcome back to This Is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. I'm Dr. Melissa Batchelor, and I am a nurse practitioner, and I wear a lot of different hats in my work, including hosting this weekly podcast to bring you news and information on aging, caring for someone living with Alzheimer's disease, and a wide range of topics that I hope will help move us towards becoming an age-friendly world. Because when things are age-friendly, they're friendly for everyone. So if you like the podcast, the best way to help me grow and support the podcast is to like it, share it, and leave a review in whatever platform you've tuned in on today. Because no matter how old you are today, we are all aging, and these issues are going to become increasingly important. If you're a millennial, there are things that need to be in place when you reach the age of 65. So we have about 20 to 25 years to get these things in place to help you age with the support and choices that will help you, just like the people that are 65 today. Your likes, shares, and reviews help get the information out to help more people dealing with these issues. So welcome back to This Is Getting Old. I'm joined today by Christina Daves. I'm so excited. Christina Daves has a company called PR for Anyone, and I've actually known about you since probably 2018 when I first moved to Fairfax, Virginia. There was a big snow, and I was, talking. Like after the third day, we kind of busted out and went down to the wine house, which was one of my favorite places to go. And was talking to Catherine Reed, who's now the mayor of Fairfax City. And in that conversation, she's like, "Do you know Christina Daves?" And I was like, "No." She said, "Well, you need to." And so I ordered your book, and I wanted to introduce myself to you for like 2 or 3 years. And then you went to an event, and I was like,
ran into it.
Well, I saw I got your email, and I was like, if she's going to be there, then I definitely have to go. And then I got to meet you in person. So I had been a sideline fan for a long time. So
sweet. Thank you.
So maybe just introduce yourself and, kind of tell us how you got into doing PR.
Yeah, that's talk about accidental. So I had owned a retail store and had done lots of entrepreneurial things. The retail store, I was burned out after 10 years. I was like, I need a break. I'm going to retire, which I found out later entrepreneurs never do. But I had a freak accident, broke my foot, and was in a medical boot. Those big, awful, ugly medical boots. And we were headed to New York City. So I'm on the train, medical boot fashions, medical boot accessories. Like there's got to be something. And there was nothing to make them look better. And literally, I joke that I think my husband saw the light bulbs go off in my head because he's been married to an entrepreneur for so long. But I came back and, actually in New York, every time I saw a woman in a boot, I said, what if you could do like nice fashion, like really make it look good, like faux fur or whatever. And everybody was so excited. So I came back and we had this 80-year-old seamstress in the neighborhood. So I'm like, Katie, let's play with this. Let's see what we can do. And we bought all these scrap fabrics, and long story short, we invented a fashion line for them and had them mass manufactured. And, I knew I had a good idea. I hired a coach who was supposed to, help me sell these. And he really just took me for my money and did nothing. So the good news is I was stuck and I had to figure it out. And I literally went to the library and read about PR and started pitching and got really good at it. And in my first year of business, I was on Fox, NBC, Washington Post. And the biggest one was the Steve Harvey Show, where I won his top inventor competition. And that put me on the map. And that's when I realized this PR thing is pretty powerful. And then I would go to events and people are like, forget the boot. Like, how do you do that? How do you get on TV? Like, I can't hire a PR firm. I don't have any money. You need to teach people how to do that. And with that, PR for Anyone was born.
Right. And there's lots of things I love about that story. It's kind of like you, by accident, literally end up finding these other different pathways. And another venture you've started more recently is that you have your own podcast. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, this is my total passion project, Living Ageless and Bold. So I'm sure a lot of, your audience is, looking at more of the health side of it. What I'm doing is I'm interviewing women, and I've interviewed you once. I'm going to interview you again, who are over 50. And a lot of it is their story and their journey, and just, how their career started and what they're doing now. And these second and third chapters are so purposeful and have so much meaning in them. And we've just evolved, and there's so much ageism out there against women like us. It's like, wait a minute, we're so smart and so confident, and we've got money and we have buying power, but nobody wants to listen to us. So my goal is to change that and just continue to share these amazing women with my audience.
Right. And so in my world, we call those encore careers.
Yes.
And so it sounds like, a lot of people have a couple of different encores, which is great.
Yeah. And they're not afraid now. They've done their job. If they had kids, usually the kids are now raised and done, and maybe you're lucky and they're done with school, and, they're off the payroll. And, or if you didn't have kids, maybe you just had an amazing corporate career, but you're at that point where they kind of want you out. And now, I read that we are the healthiest and wealthiest demographic ever in history. The women right now over 50. So it's pretty cool that we have the ability to do these encore careers. And it could be your second one. It could be your third one. I interviewed a woman in her 80s who's still going, like constantly just reinventing, recreating. I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Right. And what I hear in that is, kind of lifelong learning and the importance of staying socially engaged and learning new skills and kind of building that community out. So you're also an author.
Yes.
So this is your PR for Anyone, book. This is your second edition.
Yeah.
And I know when I was reading through it the first time, I was like, there's a lot of stuff in here that actually helped me, as a nurse and as a researcher, to kind of brand my science, and actually pass this on to a couple of my friends. I learned about Fiverr through you, creating a logo. So, I wrote a book about using social media in healthcare, which was a couple of years ago, and a lot of the same principles, that I had learned, through your work, ended up in that book as well. And nurses historically have a really difficult time engaging with the media. We are underrepresented. Most news channels seek out physicians to be their experts in whatever story they're covering. I think in like 20 years ago, they did this study called the Woodhull study, and we were in the news like 2% of the time. And 20 years later, we're now 1% of the time, even though we've been the most like trusted profession for like over 2 decades. So
don't you guys do all the work?
And maybe that's it. We're too busy working. We don't have time to engage with the media. But if somebody were new, I know a lot of my colleagues are interested in getting in and placing themselves in front of the media. So what are just kind of some basic things, if someone's listening and they're just like, I just want to know kind of where to start? And this is more of getting into like traditional media, not necessarily so much social media, but I've started working with you. So what are some of your tips for helping nurses and nursing get into the media more?
I think, and as we did with you, you position the story, and then I have all of my clients write their wow bio, just 2 sentences of, why you, what makes you great. I think in RN, it has just as much credibility as a physician does. I think of, just for example, at the ER, when you come in and it's the nurses, you don't see the doctor for a while. I think it's just doing it. I'm really curious if that 1% is that nurses really aren't pitching themselves, or is it the media turning them down? But with a,
go ahead.
No, you think it's both? You think it's the media?
No, I think it's actually both. Journalists seek an expert, and so they tend to think of physicians and they don't think of nurses. But then when they contact nurses, a lot of them just say no. But the proactive side of it, I don't know that. I think I'm the only person I know that's actually done it or is continuing to try to do it proactively. So I think it is both ways.
Well, and look at, you're the perfect example. Literally, the first pitch out of the gate, you got on TV within a week. So it was just positioning you as the expert for the story. I tell a story. I work a lot with real estate agents, and a client that I had who is not a real estate agent, she's a real estate stager, saw on Twitter a local journalist who needed a realtor in this area to talk about, the quick growth that's happening there. And she tweeted back and said, "I'm not a realtor, I'm a stager. I can get in the home at 4 o'clock. We can air your segment." And he just changed the story to, instead of, "This realtor has 10 new listings, this stager is staging 10 new listings in the area."
Right.
So it's that you just need to change that narrative a little bit, so to use your expertise versus physician's expertise.
More than 11 million Americans are providing care to either a family or friend who's living with Alzheimer's disease. And nearly 60% of these caregivers are experiencing high physical or emotional stress. But you don't have to do this alone. Visit my website at MelissaBPhD.com and learn more about a new support group that I'm starting called Caring and Sharing with Melissa B. PhD. This group will meet once a week with me. You will have access to a members-only library full of resources and practical tips to help you on your caregiving journey. And you'll have peer-to-peer support in a private Facebook group that I will oversee to make sure that the information you're getting is trustworthy. So hope to see you at an information session, and I'm looking forward to working with you very soon. I did do one interview with AARP, and she wanted to know the 10 things that hospitals needed to know for the next decade. So it was in 2000. And what she really wanted to talk about was kind of the hospitality, building, these different buildings and kind of the physical structure and all the technology. And I was like, well, actually, the most important thing is for health systems to become age friendly.
Right.
So again, it's even though that was the pitch that came to me, it is having, the ability to say, well, all that stuff's important, but here's what I think is the most important thing. And she actually led the article with that. And then she did the stuff that she wanted to. So I think it can also be done that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Just don't be afraid to say that's not your expertise, but here's what we can talk about. They just need to get their story done. They've got an assignment. They are so overworked, underpaid. You used to have big staffs in the newsrooms. You don't have that anymore. So give them a great story. It might not be exactly what they thought they were going to get, but you just made it, you still gave her a great story that she could use.
Right. And it wasn't on her radar, and it got that message out as well. Right. And so, and just to kind of explain what you mean by positioning the story, if we go back to the example of me being on Good Morning Washington, you and I had been working on looking through content calendars, and I was like, oh, Ageism Awareness Day is this coming Saturday. And then my son he had sent me a text or a message through Instagram. He goes, "Mom, you should talk about the Golden Bachelor." And following kind of your model, it's okay, let's put these two things together, and then kind of structured the pitch and then had a little wild bio at the bottom.
Yeah. Why you were the expert to talk about that. And it was perfect. It was so good. You take something that's hot. And that's actually exactly what I'm doing right now, because I walk the walk. I'm pitching my podcast because it keeps going up in rankings, which I'm so excited about. People really like it. But I'm saying, hey, with the popularity of the Golden Bachelor and this new podcast that's now top 5% globally, this is an important story to tell. These women, these stories, and let's inspire, because the demographic for TV is younger. So telling them that younger people are listening and being inspired by these older women and all of their experience. And then I took a little snippet of a LinkedIn message that a young woman had sent me about how inspiring this podcast episode was, and she loves listening. And you got to hand it to them on a silver platter.
Right. That actually makes me think I need to do more of that myself for this podcast. Take lessons from Christina.
Yeah.
So what are some other strategies that, so you know your expertise?
If you are going to do social media, to constantly put content out there related to your expertise. If you do, for example, you with ageism, Alzheimer's, dementia, if there's a nurse who specializes in pediatrics, put content out there that's helpful so that if the media checks you out, you check out, that they can see right away, oh, this is the person we want to use. If it's TV, make sure they can see you on video a little bit before. Not as strict as it used to be. You might be able to get on local television without any video experience, but if you have it, it's much better.
Right. And then I think, from a social media perspective, if you're a nurse scientist or a nurse, working in any environment, using graphics, which, Canva has a free service that you can use. It's actually not that hard to do, but you can create your own graphics and then just post a little narrative. And if you're doing that consistently, that's just another way to kind of get your message out there, and show that you are engaging with other people. Yeah.
And things like Twitter, and I'm not telling anyone to go on every platform, but platforms that do use hashtags, sometimes the media will look for that. Like they'll find you online. So that's important too. But you've got to have some content in your expertise, because they are going to look for you. And, if you do a pitch and you don't have a website, you don't have a LinkedIn, you don't have an Instagram, whatever that is, it's going to be much harder to get the yes. I always say you have to check out when the media checks you out.
That's true. And then the other thought that I had last week, and I actually met with our marketing department, like if you are in a university or if you're in a health system, all of these organizations have media departments. And so what are some ways that we can kind of help our media departments? I feel like it's going to be kind of the same type of thing, because our media department said, hey, would you be interested in doing a story about this? And I was like, sure. Where I had my Google alert on. So actually when she posted, she just really kind of put like my traditional bio and said, if you're looking for an expert, we have one. And I was like, I wouldn't even pick me over that. So I was like, could we meet and kind of talk about so I think even our university and our health systems marketing departments, I mean, they're not doing kind of the model that you taught me to do, and kind of showed her the difference.
Right. You have to be your own megaphone and you have to check out. Again, that's why we do the wow bio. Like, what is it, and it is difficult when you're dealing with institutions, academia. It's different verbiage. It's different, but we're talking mainstream media. So you've got to talk like you're talking to an 8th grader, a 15-year-old. You've got to talk so that people understand it. And I've worked with a lot of healthcare providers, and they'll send a pitch, and I'm like, oh, what does that mean? We need to fix this. But then they start to understand it. And it's just, you all are incredibly intelligent. You've gone up the ranks doing research, writing, papers, medical papers, but you've got to shift your thinking and your speaking and your writing to everyday people who are watching. Most people watching TV haven't finished high school, like your local television kind of thing, or maybe just got through high school. So you've got to tell stories that relate to them.
Right. And one of the questions that we're taught as kind of, because there is, in science, there's like a 17-year gap between the time we publish an article and the time the public usually sees it. It takes that long for it. It's called the 17-year odyssey in science. And, we could be for me, I published, the paper around my hand feeding techniques. And 2 years later, I was in the AARP recording studios, translating it for family caregivers. And I was like, okay, well, that really shortened the trajectory a lot.
Yeah.
And so what I'm talking to my colleagues about is so when you have as even as a PhD student, you say, well, I want to change the world. I want to, make, meals better in nursing homes. And they're like, well, so what? What's your so what? So it's almost like it is sales and marketing, but if you've written the grant and you've gotten the funding, don't you? I mean, I would think that you'd want people to hear about it. And so thinking through that's important as well. So maybe tell us the hardest person that you've worked for that, that you helped them take it from like maybe a 1-page bio to like a short paragraph?
Oh, well, I'll tell you how the WOW bio started. I worked with a woman who did healing through music, and she was so good, and she had so much success. And I mean, like stage 4 cancer patients that were in remission through that. Like, and you all are in the medical field. I'm a big proponent of East and Western medicine mixing, but anyway, she was really fascinating. But as time went on, I was like, well, where did you go to school? And she said, I went to Juilliard and then I got a master's at Yale. And I was like, oh. And she's like, yeah. And I used to play with Frank Sinatra every Friday night. And I'm a 25-year Reiki master, which kind of fits into the whole music therapy. So this kept going on and on. I've been on stage with Bruce Springsteen, and I'm like, okay, let's start. So now, like, people, you just don't think about maybe some research that you've done that's now big. Like I talked to some people at NIH, and they had talked about me coming in to help their researchers. They're like, we create the drugs that are doing X, Y, and Z. That's what you know about them. But what about us? That we created it before, Pfizer sold it or somebody like that. So this is pre-COVID, because I think in COVID, we learned a lot about the developers of things. But it's owning you and what you've done, and, what makes you newsworthy, what makes, what is that wow? And especially women watching, it's hard for us to do that. We weren't trained that way. We weren't raised that way. It's, you just kind of do your amazing work and you just move on and do more amazing work. But it's okay to put yourself out there and tell the world that you're great, and really figure out what that WOW bio is. And I'll tell you something great. I interviewed, there's a great book. I couldn't remember what the interview is. It's Joanne Lippman, and the book is called Next. It's all about reinvention. And there's a woman she interviewed who's a scientist, and she did a CV of failure. And every research project denied, every paper denied, everything. And she put it out and it went viral. But what she found from this was that she found that she was really good at working, she was not good at working in a lab setting. She was really good in the computation part of it. So in putting her CV of failure together, she figured out what she's really good at, and then her career blew up. So kind of in line with that WOW bio, like figure out what are you good at.
And the boot. Blinging out your boot. Yeah. And that was another thing when I first learned about your story, was I was like, I was going to bling out walkers and canes like back in the day, and then ended up not doing it. And I was like, and then she just had the idea and like figured out how to do it. So that's also true too. But it's like, if you put that much time and effort into your research, like we need a better way to kind of translate that science. And so maybe it is working, with, you, or even asking me too, like, how do we translate this study into something that the public can understand, and why? Right. It's actually your why. Like, why did you do the study, and how is it going to make people's lives better?
Right. Exactly. Like your feeding process that you did. I think that's when we first met, was when all of that was just kind of coming out. But yeah, why? And with an aging population, what are these things that are going to help our parents, our grandparents, us as we age? Why did you do it? Because you want everyone to have a better life.
Yeah. So now tell us your biggest success story, like somebody that you worked with and kind of gave them your formula, and now they've just like taken off.
Oh my goodness. There's so many. The thing is, once you do it, you can keep doing it and keep having success. So we have something that we call Pitch Club Cafe. People come in every Wednesday, and it's just where they come to pitch. We brainstorm ideas, we help them. They write their pitches, we review them, they send them off. And we have, I have one client who's been an on and off client, oh my gosh, probably 10 years now. And I think she gets in the media every week. She's so perfected this. And she even now has a column in her local newspaper. She's not paying for it. They've asked her to write it. She's regularly on her local radio, regularly on local TV. even if the pitch doesn't work, the producers are emailing her back like, oh, Amy, this was great. Doesn't fit right now, but keep sending us stuff. So she's just skyrocketed. But it just goes to show it's just consistency. If you just pitch regularly, you will have success. If you learn how to do good pitches and you give them good story ideas, like we did the National Ageism Day and Golden Batchelor, like celebrity sells, dangle a little carrot with that, but learning how to do that and then being consistent with it. And that there's so many of my clients, like I couldn't pick one because there's so many who are regularly in, just as I know you're going to be, because you now know how to do it. You started, you've been on, and it's just going to keep going.
But I hope so. So now, you mentioned the pitch cafe that you do. You have your book, you have your podcast, and people can also work with you one-on-one.
Yeah.
So I think the question that I had when you were talking was, but how do you find the journalists? So like, what are some tips for finding the journalists that you can pitch to?
So there's this incredible resource. Write this down. Google. Who writes about X for Y? What's the phone number of the newsroom for WKOR? Google's an incredible resource. And every day it's just filled with more and more information. And you all have to remember, journalists want to be found. They're not hiding from us. They're not like, oh, no, don't give me a story. When I speak, I always say there's not a newsroom in the country that's going to say, I'm sorry, we're not taking any new stories today. It's not going to happen. It's just not. But you have to make sure they're good stories that they look at. And even if you don't get the yes, it's a good story, it's good content. So if it doesn't go to the media, you still get to use it for content or a newsletter or, whatever that other stuff you do is. But by giving them good story ideas, you will get yeses.
Yeah. And to me, that makes me think of repurposing, because you and I just talked about, this next month that's coming up, for me, and I'm not sure when this podcast will air, but, if that like November is National Caregiver Month. So I'm looking back now and thinking through, okay, I have like 4 or 5 different, I've got a lot of podcasts about caregiving in general, but how do I take all the work I've already done and repackage it into a pitch and get that out? And even more recently, I've like, maybe what I should do is like pull some of those episodes back out and just schedule them to come out to have people go back and revisit. Because, if you're putting something out once a week, it's very likely somebody's not going to have seen it the first time. So that's why, if you're doing a pitch for media, you could even turn that into an op-ed, or if you've done the op-ed, turn that into the pitch. I had another thought, but I forgot what it was. Yeah. So we'll just. But
repurposing it. And now with ChatGPT, you can repurpose things. Take this article. I don't like ChatGPT for writing pitches. I tested it. And I have a blog post. Can ChatGPT be your publicist? But you could take a white paper, take something long that you've written or a podcast transcript and say, give me 5 media pitch ideas based on this transcript, and then write your pitch. Let it help you with the ideation part of it.
Right. I've even used it to do like, take this paragraph and turn it into like a 30-second, 15-second, like real idea, and then just record those too. So it is nice to have those tools now, because usually I was like, I have to sit here for a long time,
figure this out. Yes. No, it's great.
All right. So if someone wanted to work with you, maybe give us some ideas of how to get in touch with you.
I always say, if you can't find me, I'm in really big trouble. But the website is ChristinaDaves.com, and everything's on there. Social media, Christina Daves Official, PR for anyone. But the best way is the website, and you can easily reach me through that.
All right. And then your podcast, I subscribe to your podcast.
Yes. It's and that's on the website too. You'll see podcasts, but Living Ageless and Bold, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Well, I'm excited that you've been able to join me today, and hopefully, some of the folks that I've been having media discussions with, this will help, nurses kind of hone their message and get into the media to help get our voices out there, to share our expertise and knowledge as well.
Yeah, just do it. I'm confident. Just do it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. You can check out other episodes on this platform or visit my website at MelissaBPhD.com. Thanks to listeners like you, in the first 18 months of This Is Getting Old, we have reached a ranking of top 10% globally, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your support in making that happen. I'm also really excited to let you know that you can now work with me directly, either one-on-one or you can join one of the groups that I coach. Particularly if you're an adult child dealing with an aging parent or a caregiver trying to manage the complexities of someone living with Alzheimer's disease. In the show notes, you can also find information about how to reach out and contact me directly, and I hope to work with each of you very soon as we discover and share more ways to make the world more age-friendly for everyone. My website also has information about how to contact me for speaking engagements, or if you have someone you'd like to recommend as a show guest for This Is Getting Old. If you have a product or service in the aging space that you would like to advertise and or sponsor an episode, there's more information about that on my website. And you can also find books and courses that I developed and learn more about the products and services that I recommend. So don't forget, if you like the podcast, the best way to help me grow and support it is to like it, share it, and leave a review in whatever platform that you've tuned in on today. Your likes, shares, and reviews help increase my rating and my rankings, and also help other people find the podcast. I look forward to reading your reviews and hearing from you.